if it's Hillary, who else, is going to be in the mix, and then to see, as you said, breaking off, who decides to double down and go for the dark horse candidate. I mean, those will definitely be factors in the party politics in the coming year.
Do you see the senator from Massachusetts playing any role?
Potentially. Again, I think right now, I think there's such a fixation on the immediacy of state government here, seeing what the governor-elect does. I don't know when the time frame is when we kind of tack to the more national look.
Because ultimately, Gina's appeal that she's tried to stake out early is her connections to the Obaministas. I mean, the notion's already been floated up through the media, and anything you hear at top side of the media started out with a trial balloon from a presser somewhere. The notion that Gina's got this inside loop, if you will, with the Obama folks. Do you see her using that to her advantage?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And let's not forget, too, and when we just talk about who she's brought in, and I know we've chatted about this before, I mean, Martin O'Malley's name has been floated as a dark horse candidate. She, I think, is clearly tapping into some, not just folks with just experience in other states, but that national stage connections to look at moving forward. So, don't discount who she's picked and why.
Well, I also have to admit that I knew a couple of folks that were in the big economic summit, the pre-inauguration economic
I wasn't
summit.
Invited to that either.
Well, nor was I. But I was really surprised at a couple of names that jumped out at me of people that were in the room, people you wouldn't typically think are going to be in this kind of business-centric economic development summit, if you will.
So, for example, who?
A guy like Abel Collins was in the room. You saw some folks from kind of the social ventures, sector. A lot of folks from, who work with local chambers of commerce and things like that. So I think that, there was a bit more of a focus on the small business sector, which I think, frankly, we should do a hell of a lot more of here in Rhode Island. So one of the things that strikes me about this past election, so I worked on a campaign where, we were running against a very weak incumbent candidate and still lost, which is a little disappointing. But I think, now Pat mentioned 2016, the Democratic Party in Rhode Island seems to be having a bit of a personality crisis. It doesn't know if it's the centrist pro-business Democrats or the more left progressive folks that are coming on. But one of the problems that happens at that point is, and we saw this in the governor's race, the state Democratic Party put so much time, effort, and money into getting Gina Raimondo elected that they lost seats in the General Assembly, frankly, because they didn't have the boots on the ground, the support that those local candidates need. My argument is always the General Assembly affects our daily lives daily. So why is not more precedence given to those races? And do you think that'll change in the presidential election?
And I have to agree with you on the changing face of the Democratic Party. I mean, one of the things we kept pointing out after is who they fronted as their endorsed candidates and who came out of the fray. Peter Kilmartin, the incumbent. It's a party in flux, and as you mentioned, the General Assembly is where things happen, and for better or for worse, and it's, as we just mentioned, headed up by Speaker Mattiello, and so again we'll see the influence from the Raimondo administration on that. But I think that this will be an incredibly intriguing year because, as you said, the identity of the party is completely in flux.
Yeah, we have groups like the Young Democrats that endorsed basically an entirely different slate of candidates as the state Democratic Party does. Certainly, groups like Progressive Democrats Rhode Island appeal more towards people in the Green Party, people who are a little bit more left of center and progressive. So, I personally see within the next 5 years kind of a bifurcation. I see a progressive party kind of coming out of this whole mess.
Well, Dave, we came up with the term a few weeks ago, post-election, that a few people got Samini'd. You got Samini'd if Paulie Walnuts, our esteemed General Assembly dear leader, decided that you weren't, quote unquote, practical enough to suit his litmus test. And
he said as much.
Well, exactly. So has Gina Raimondo, particularly with this influx of out-of-state progressive Democrats, become the new home for the progressive Democrats, despite the fact that they've got such a native distrust of her. I don't know if they've got anywhere else to go. It'll be one of the great adventures to watch dyed-in-the-wool Green Party progressive Democrats try and rationalize who they're going to stand with. And I believe ultimately on some of these real key
progressives issues, are used to making the choice between the lesser of two evils.
Well, and some of these issues, you've got a balkanized General Assembly now. Some of these issues, they'll have the opportunity to be a swing vote on it if they play their cards. We've only got a few minutes left, so I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the media to someone who is so involved in the media. Briefly, there wasn't so long ago that people like Don Carcieri literally took to the airwaves, unfettered, unfiltered, the acoustic version, willing to answer questions directly. Over the last few years, though, we've seen a rather disturbing evolution of folks coming from the media. And I'll go down the list quickly. Cicilline, Karen Southern, Connie Grosh as press spokesman. Dan McKee hiring Erica Nadowski from the AP. Carcieri had Steve Cass on the Republican side, so both sides are guilty. Diana Kelsch, active as in the Justice Administration here in Rhode Island. Jim Tarracani, Lincoln Almond. I mean, is there... It seems to be becoming more prevalent, though, that there seems to be this revolving door between the media and the chattering classes. Have the Rhode Island political class lawyered up by hiring the media?
That is a very interesting way to put it. I mean, it seems to me, the safe card to play, obviously, in that sense, in terms of lawyering up is actually haven't thought of that term or heard of that term. It's the safety card, and whether or not it will, is a prudent, does it on a case by case basis, because you'll always have other media such as Go Local looking to ask the harder questions if they might not be as forthcoming as we would hope. But
once you cross that bridge, once you go over to the dark side, if you will, in your mind as a journalist and as someone who's made a career out of it at a very high level, do you believe then that you can't come back?
That's a good question. I don't know that per se. My trajectory is very different than a lot of others. I mean, I came to this by lieu of a political background. I don't know if I don't think you can hopscotch back and forth, but it depends on the scenario.
Well, and this is something we've touched on quite a few times in the past. Is where as a journalist do you draw the line between integrity and access? Like, I understand, like, you need...
We have neither here.
but there is, and I'm sure that, I mean, that's something as a journalist, when I was a reporter, that was something that I wrestled with. When somebody didn't specifically say, hey, this is off the record, and it's kind of like, you know what, I don't really want to stick it to this guy, and I want him to be able to come to me with other things. Like, it's a really fine line to walk, I think. And I think, Pat, is fair to say, when you jump back and forth, where does that leave your integrity as a journalist?
Yeah, no, I would have to agree with that. And, as you know, we had Dean Starkman, who used to be with the Journal, and if you guys saw his book that he put out last year, The Watchdog That Didn't Bite, was focusing on Wall Street and access journalism and basically calling out the cadre of insiders who just play to the inside game and ultimately what ended up happening. I think, I play a long game. I think, it's very outside and periphery driven to the inside. But yeah, once you start jumping back and forth, the questions naturally get raised.
The career scope, if you will, of a journalist, if you're my age, and I'm the oldest person in this room, all right, stems
not mentally
completely out of the Nixon administration. So I find it amazing that folks in this generation could so easily go over to that side. Listen, I want to thank Kate Nagel for coming in. Again, we're going to have this podcast up hopefully later in the week. CoalitionRadio.us, where you'll be able to find it, as well as our Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. Kate, it was wonderful. We hope you'll come back in again.
It was great being here. So enjoyed it.
All right. Particularly if you've got any hot breaking news that you want to promote.
Always.
Tony Jones, please don't be a stranger.
Always a pleasure, and it's time for White Man Dancing.
Kate, real quick, before we hit the break, tell people where they can find you, like Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff.
Twitter handle at NagelKate78. Of course, check out GoLocalProv.com. Hit me with the message on Twitter, and I'll hit you back.
And if you're going to drop a dime in Rhode Island, there's no better place to go, right?
Come to me.
All right. Listen, we'll see you next week. Next week we have Corey Ugan coming in from Normal. Continue to advance that argument. Folks, have a great week.
Imus in the morning. Brown around sports. AM 790 Talk and Business. WPRV Providence. A Cumulus station.